Hello and welcome to another episode of Voices from Our Schools. I'm Beth Graham, the Director of Professional Development, Adult Collaboration, and Teacher Evaluation in the Amherst Regional Public Schools, and I'm delighted to be here today, joined by three colleagues to talk about the Amherst Education Foundation's support for our schools. So turning to our guests, today we have Erica Zekas, who is the president of the Amherst Education Foundation, Mike Morris, principal of Crocker Farm Elementary School, and Stephanie Joyce, the literacy coach at Crocker Farm Elementary School. Thank you so much for joining us here. You know, it's ironic, I'm usually in this studio on beautiful, sunny, warm days, and today is definitely the coldest, dreariest day of the year, so thank you for brightening the afternoon. So we'd like to talk a little bit about Amherst Education Foundation. We're going to turn first right to Erica. And I'm wondering if you could start just by giving us a brief history and overview of the Amherst Education Foundation and some of the work that you do as a foundation to support our schools.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here. And Amherst Education Foundation, AEF, is really proud to be a community partner with Amherst Public Schools. We've been a public nonprofit since 1994. So 17 years of serving the schools. We represent and serve Amherst, Pelham, Leverett, and Shutesbury public schools. And we have an all-volunteer board, currently 17 board members and another 24 or so non-board committee members who are actively working on behalf of AEF's efforts. Our mission is to support the public schools. We provide a challenging and enriching educational experience and want to maximize the learning potential of every student in the district. We're able to do this, we're able to support the schools because the community supports AEF. We're supported by businesses and hundreds of individuals in the community who donate their time and talent and dollars to our efforts. This year our goal is to raise over $50,000. And we do this through a number of different efforts. We have Thank a Teacher opportunities. You may have recently seen the bright blue flyers with snowflakes on them, offering parents and guardians the opportunity to say thank you to a favorite teacher or staff member. We have an annual appeal, and we have events, one in the fall, the Trivia Bee, and one in the spring now, the Spring Sprint.
Well, that's fabulous. Yeah. You know, we so appreciate your support of our schools in all of the various ways that you do that.
Thank you.
Did you want to talk a little bit more about some of those events, the Trivia Bee?
Sure. Yeah, we just had our 17th annual Trivia Bee on October 28th. We had 34 teams and over 100 contestants, Mike Morris included. And, so many people in the audience. It's a really fantastic community event. The winner was the Greenfield Savings Bank team, and members of the planning board sat on that team. And we raised over $7,000. It's a really fun event. The first snowfall of the year was really early, October 28th.
Right.
And then last year we had our first annual Spring Sprint. It's a 5K run walk. We had about 100 participants, again, Morris. And you can save the date for May 5th, 2012.
Sweet.
We're going to have our second annual.
And the sprint included adults and children, is that right?
It did, yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
So if I could just jump in here for a second, one of the things that I appreciate, separate from all the support that you do, but about how AEF is organized, is both the events, the Trivia Bee, and the Spring Sprint are really fun community events. So in addition to raising funds for our schools and for AEF, I think they were great community events. So having done the Trivia Bee for about 4 or 5 years now, I mean, if you go, even as a spectator, it's just enjoyable. I mean, there's a reason why people come and videotape it and show it on ACTV because people watch it, on Amherst Media because people watch it. And the Spring Sprint was the first time that Mary Donahue, who's a Crocker Farm staff member, as well as Amherst parent, helped organize it. And again, people were so I was there, we ran the race, and then people were just at Groff Park for hours afterwards, and they weren't waiting for awards or anything like that. It was just this wonderful, beautiful spring day that people enjoyed themselves. So on a personal level, I really appreciate that the fundraising events that you choose aren't just fundraising events, they're community events, and it's really meaningful for people that they both support the schools and can have a good time at the same simultaneously.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. We really do want to. I mean, building community is a big part of what we do, and in addition to hosting our own community events, we've been honored to be a part of school community events, such as the first day celebration on the town common, which
Right.
is a lot of fun for a couple of years in a row now. So,
It's a real partnership.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm wondering if you could move us a little bit now from some of the events into other ways that you support our schools, particularly around grants.
Mm-hmm. Over the past couple of years, we've worked, I think, in close partnership with the superintendent, Maria Geryk, and with you, Beth, to identify areas of need in the schools. We've surveyed teachers and staff members of the schools and heard over and over again that there's a real need to support professional development. And so over the last few years, AEF has, AEF has supported professional development opportunities. And I know that you're going to talk more about that, with Stephanie and Mike. And so,
Well, when I first came to the district, I inherited an initiative that was funded through AEF, the very beginnings of what is now known as professional learning communities in our schools, right? And there was a particular focus around differentiated instruction. I remember that I wasn't here at the time, but Carol Ann Tomlinson had been brought in to do some work with teachers, and then from that grew a vertical and horizontal curriculum alignment project that enabled teachers in the content areas, right, to talk about how did the curriculum thread or spiral from elementary through middle school and into the high school. Where were the transitional points? Where were the places that perhaps needed a little bit more attention? And so then, and from there, I came, became familiar with AEF because I was encouraged to write a grant, right, to support the Summer Institute for Professional Development, which engaged 23 teachers and school leaders in learning some habits, right, and processes for collaborative practice and facilitative leadership. So how do you facilitate conversations that focus primarily on students and their learning, right? How do you engage in discourse that's reflective with one another? What are the structures that enable people to take some risks in terms of making their practice public to one another and asking one another for feedback and support to some of the rich dilemmas or problems of practice that we all hold, and sometimes could really benefit from more perspective and insight around. So, because of this, the support, and we actually are flashing a check someplace, a mock-up of the check that was awarded to us. Because of this work, we were able to actually run a second institute, a follow-up institute in the summer, and this idea of professional learning community and teachers working in teacher collaboration teams and engaging in the cycle of inquiry now is really becoming part of the fabric of our schools. It's the way that we're doing business this year, this embedded professional development. And we really have Amherst Education Foundation to thank for sowing those seeds. One last thing I just want to touch base on, as a result of these institutes, there are now 18 teachers who participate in monthly sessions, follow-up sessions around this work, right? We call them critical friends groups, where they're bringing their dilemmas and their student learning and student achievement data, performance data, and really trying to understand more about how to support all learners. So your project, the funding of your project, has really afforded us some real sustainability.
Well, that's nice to
Thank
hear.
you.
Thank you. I think that it, we have a goal of funding efforts and initiatives that reach across the district, and certainly professional development has the capacity to do that. Supporting teachers then supports the educational excellence of the students, it's nice to hear it also that it's become embedded in the district.
Indeed.
The way that you're talking about it makes it sound like it has a great deal of impact.
Yeah, and as someone who participated in the second institute that was made possible through AEF, it really has informed the way we can respond to dilemmas that come up in our practice. We were talking earlier that just last week, a member of our school instructional leadership team had a dilemma and wanted to get feedback on it. And oftentimes getting feedback can be a willy-nilly process where the person doing the presenting doesn't get the feedback that they need, that he or she needs. And the use of protocols and some of the facilitation tools that we learn really contributed to a much better product and also a really good process by which people can ask for feedback. It's okay to ask for feedback. And then improve our practice, improve what we do for adults and children in our schools. So it really is impacting well beyond the Summer Institute.
Great.
That's terrific. And then in terms of the work that's happening in the schools, right, professional learning communities and inquiry groups, Stephanie, we'd love to bring you into the conversation, particularly around these issues.
Well, at Crocker Farm, we had the good fortune of having support from AEF to really infuse what I think is of the culture of learning and study in our school, because it supported us to work with teacher leaders to meet on a very regular basis with our principal, with Mike, to think about the ways that we would in fact grow our leadership skills and facilitate professional learning communities. So maybe you want to say a little bit about how that work came to be, and I could say a little bit more about some of those professional learning communities.
Great. So when we think about professional learning communities, that's a little bit of a buzzword right now. And so trying to think about how to explain that, it's really the vehicle by which our excellent teachers are able to share the information with each other, so that we're not talking about something going on in one classroom that's great or this classroom that's fabulous, but we're saying let's get all those ideas to the surface so that we can all learn from the talented teachers we have in Amherst and ensure that it's across classrooms, that all the wonderful ideas that are happening, that are percolating from our outstanding teachers aren't just individual ideas, but infused to the whole school. And so that sounds easy, and I think the reality of how busy we are in schools, that really we need to maximize our time. And the idea of a professional learning community is that we use our time wisely so that we continue to grow. And I heard the term before, embedded professional development, and that's really what we're doing. So one form of professional development is bringing somebody from the outside in, and I think there's value in that. But often what happens in between those visits is just as, if not more important, that we're making sure that we are taking initiatives that are going on in the schools and ensuring that they're implemented well for the best interest of children. So we're very fortunate, and I'll speak from my experience at Crocker Farm. We have really talented teacher leaders. Not every school can say that, not every principal can say that, but I say it really confidently about Crocker Farm. And there's many of them. Whatever their title is, we have many teachers who know their craft extremely well and are constantly learning both with school-sponsored activities and then going back and reading on their own or going to different things to help their craft improve. So last year, we wanted to capitalize on that. We said we have all these people with all this knowledge, and we really want our staff to be engaged in that. So we have staff meetings twice a month, and we dedicated every other staff meeting, so once a month, to have inquiry groups. The topics were selected by the staff. They were saying, here's what I want to work with, here's what I need bolstering in, here's what I know and want to share with others. So it wasn't necessarily a deficit model, it was a strength model as well. And so we asked staff, what are things we're working on? And out of that became staff members, teacher leaders who volunteered to facilitate inquiry groups. And what the AEF funding allowed us to do is to meet as a group of teacher leaders around facilitation skills, to share what was really working well. So again, our facilitation is kind of like one level up from, we create our own professional learning community around how to facilitate a group of learning of adult learners. And the power in it, and I sat in on all the different groups throughout the year, was incredible, because what I saw was people taking risks, again, another term that I heard Beth use before, to really talk about what they're doing, what they wanted for kids, and where that gap was, and to share the ideas collaboratively to help us all improve our instruction in a variety of different areas. And I'm going to ask Stephanie to speak a little bit about, she was one of the teacher leaders who ran an inquiry group last year. But I want to make sure that we get back to the fact of what resulted from that, both in last year, but also in terms of an ongoing structure within our school. So I know AEF is really interested in funding things that have value that's longitudinal, and this certainly did. So we'll talk a little bit about last year, and then we'll transition to how it's really affected our school culture and climate.
So the support really enabled teacher leaders to meet with the principal on a very regular basis and really think about the kinds of inquiry, the kinds of questions and issues that could lead us on paths of inquiry that could then allow us to look at really evidence-based information from formative assessments, from student work, from other data that could help us really look at how we were answering those questions and thinking about how those issues around improving our professional instructional capabilities were leading to continuous student improvement. The work also enabled us to really look at and learn some of the protocols that Beth talked about, that there was more work on this summer. So we had a way of learning how to work in those professional learning communities so that teachers could really deepen and clarify their thinking around the things we were learning and the issues that we were exploring. And in general, just learned more ways to kind of foster leadership skills and think about how we could be more collaborative in that process to support one another and offer feedback. The professional learning communities then that came out of that offered teachers the opportunity to really choose topics that they were interested in, to really think about how they connected to district initiatives, because we wanted to be certain that that was part of it in our own school improvement plan. And I think that when I think about the work that came about through the sponsorship of AEF to facilitate the leaders, I think about the work of professional learning communities as being very ongoing, very close to our practice, really embedded in classroom practice and what's happening in the schools, that it's very reflective and that it's always looking at student work and thinking, how is what we're learning and putting into practice making a difference for student achievement? And we were able to do that around strategies for improving teacher practices in reading workshop at K2. We were able to do that with conferring practices in reading at grades 3 to 6. We facilitated a group around ELL learning and vocabulary growth in reading and writing and content area literacy, around our district initiative in PBIS, or positive behavioral intervention systems, and how we're thinking about social emotional health and well-being and growth in conjunction with academic growth and learning. And another group that was facilitated around effective communication in classroom learning environments for classroom management. So that's a lot of impact for a lot of educators and a lot of students because of the kind of leadership learning that went on and the kind of focus we could put into really ongoing collaborative work.
I think one of the most exciting experiences about that, having sat in, I would go from one group for 10 minutes, and so I would get the pieces, but at one point in the year we jigsawed. So what happened was members of each of those groups got together with members of all the other groups. So say I was in a group learning about PBIS, I then sat with members of all the other groups, and we talked about what we were learning and how it was impacting our practice. And that meeting could have went on for 4 hours because people were so excited both to share what they were learning and what they were doing, not just the learning but also doing, but also to hear about what their colleagues were learning about and doing. So out of that, really, in my own role, it was a reflective moment for me to say, okay, so this is wonderful, and what's the system by which this isn't a one-time event, right? And so out of that really became thinking about creating a school instructional leadership team that met on a weekly basis. So currently at Crocker Farm we have a member who's Stephanie is our literacy curriculum leader, so she's working in that area. We have Sherry Conklin, who's in a similar role in math. Tara Luce is our guidance counselor. Derek Shea is our assistant principal. Myself and Elizabeth Walsh, who helps facilitate us and keeps us on target in wonderful ways. And we meet on a weekly basis to talk about our learning, in different leadership ways. And teachers meet at grade level teams with those folks on a rotating basis. So every month they'll rotate from a grade level team meeting with Stephanie, with Shari, with Tara, and then back with the administrative group. So really, as Beth said before, it's embedded into the organization and culture of our schools.
Right.
And I don't think that would have happened if not for AEF getting some of the teacher leadership work off the ground. But now it's an integral part of our school. And looking back, and this sounds hokey, but I can't remember our school without it, because it really infuses the teacher leadership piece in every decision that we make as a school. So it kind of knocks down lots of walls and allows us to do our own learning around leadership, as well as promote the leadership of other teachers, because we have a school of leaders. It's not just the people on this SILT, as we acronym.
I love what Stephanie said about it being a lot of impact, and when you talk about it, it certainly sounds like an extraordinary amount of work. And I know that it's happening at Crocker Farm, and it's structured a little differently at some of the other schools that are participating. But
That's right. So the work at Crocker Farm is so very exciting, and there's equally exciting work happening in all of the schools throughout the district. So, you know, in my role in the district now, I have the privilege of coaching several of these groups, sitting in SILT teams in 2 schools at the high school, sitting in with the teaching and learning curriculum group, the data task force, and this notion of what it means to collaborate, right, around our practice with a deliberate focus on student learning. It's like it's caught fire in the district. It's just a very, very exciting time to be there. And again, you know, we can trace it back actually to the foundation support. But there's one other thing that I'd really love to add about this work, right? So just to follow up on some of the things that Mike said, the work really does depend and is grounded on the expertise and experience that every teacher holds, right? We trust that teachers are well educated and carry much experience and expertise into the classroom. And what professional learning community does, or teacher collaboration teams do, is help us tap into the expertise and the experience that each of us holds, right? And so, you know, my motto around the district is, so together, we're smarter than any one of us can be, working alone in our classroom, even on our very best day, right? That's what the quality of work is doing for us in the district. So we're going to go back to you for just 1 second, Erica, right? Or a couple minutes even. Mm-hmm. And so we're looking a little bit into the future, right? So what are we thinking about now? What's on the horizon for Amherst Education Foundation?
Well, after a short hiatus in competitive grant making, we are happy to be moving in that direction again, and opened up a request for proposals last summer, and received by the deadline, which was December 1st, 9 grant applications for really excellent projects in the district. We are focusing still on supporting district-wide initiatives, things that have sustained impact, will reach broad numbers of children, will reach deeply into the practice of teachers, into the everyday learning of kids in their classrooms. Our hope is to give 2 to 4 grants, and our goal is $10,000 to $25,000 each. So, in raising $50,000, we are hoping to give it away, and we'll be announcing our grants in early April. We have a fantastic allocations committee, and have also brought additional community members onto that review committee. So we're representing businesses and nonprofit communities, past teaching excellence. We've got a really fantastic review committee, and I don't envy their job in having to make a decision about those grants. But we're really looking forward to that. Stay tuned.
Yes, with bated breath, I will. So, Stephanie, I know that you were an applicant, or you submitted an application. Did you want to talk at all about the process?
I think I could add that those kind of grant opportunities, in addition to the kinds of things we've been talking about today, really have allowed teachers and administrators in our district to garner support for both ongoing professional development, for the kinds of initiatives around curriculum and student learning that we're so intent upon in our district, and also for very kinds of creative and innovative ideas around teaching and learning to engage all kinds of learners. One of the things that I think is notable about the work of AEF is the way that they've designed their criteria for those grants. And Erica's mentioned the intent that they will have impact district-wide, certainly the idea that they're going to have the potential to have impact in a long-term way, that they can be sustained, and that they can be replicated beyond the year of grant funding, which is important. And I think some of the work we've talked about today is reflective of that, how the work of AEF carries on. Another part of that criteria was about how the project would support visibility in our schools and our community. So it fits with AEF's mission in terms of community impact in a bigger way. And certainly that all of these projects would in some way fit with our school improvement plans as well. So I know that there was excitement among teachers and educators for the opportunity for really sizable grants, that we often don't have the opportunity to think in that kind of scope for projects that could impact continuous student achievement and improvement. So we thank you.
We're inspired by your work, the work of teachers, and the excellent outcome of all of this learning in the district. It's incredible what Amherst has to boast. With so many dedicated teachers and staff and so many excellent kids. Yeah. We're happy to be a part of it.
We're happy to be a part of it too. Thank you. Any comments about the grant process, Mike?
Sure, I'll just share one of the things that we were talking about earlier before the taping was that I really appreciate that AEF thought to offer to send an AEF member, a board member, is that
Yep,
it? To each school to explain the process because it was a large grant. There was rightfully a thorough application process.
Yes.
And it really helped the staff members, and there were multiple staff members from Crocker Farm who attended, so I can only speak for the one I attended, but people had really good questions and they left having answers. So instead of going online and printing it out and then trying to make sense of it, it was an opportunity for FaceTime, and it was an opportunity to have questions answered that some questions aren't the best ones for email, and they're more complex, and it really, the outreach was notable, and people at Crocker Farm really appreciated, and not just Stephanie, but other people who attended came up to me afterwards and they said, that was really important that we got an opportunity to ask those questions, that someone from AEF was there, and one person had a question they wanted, and the representative said, oh, I'll email you back, and she did. So people really felt like they got the information they needed to be able to apply.
Right.
Great to hear.
The rigorous application process too, the strident application, it really enabled, I think, everyone to be quite thoughtful and reflective about exactly what it was they were looking for in terms of funding. I appreciated the professionalism that was exhibited by that application.
Well, likewise, the applications themselves are pretty, they're impressive.
So we're almost coming to a close, and if I'm just going to check in, are there any final comments? We might want to advertise how we would find you on the web.
Well, AmherstEducationFoundation.org, and we're on Facebook as well. You can like us there. Anybody who would like to receive our beautiful Spotlight e-newsletter can sign up on the website.
Yeah.
It's a great way to stay in touch.
And you can see fabulous photographs of all of your events there as well.
That's right. Lots of principals on the website.
So again, Erica, we thank you so very much for your continued support of our educational initiatives in the school district. Mike, I want to thank you for sharing this afternoon with us and all of your many insights. Stephanie, it was really great to hear your perspective on all the work that you've been able to lead at Crocker Farm. Thank you for joining us today. And so again, we thank you for being with us for another episode of Voices from Our Schools. Look for us at www.arps.org.